Greetings, welcome into this edition of ESPN FC's Extra Time. I'm Sebastian Salazar, got your questions straight off of Twitter, and we've got quite the trio to take them today. Ian, Shaka.
Greetings. Whatever happened to, hey there everybody, where you got this greetings from?
Shaka, when you start to answer the question, I'm just going to cut off the next time I don't like how you're starting it.
I'm lost.
Hi there,
where
everybody.
am I?
Come on now.
You're on Extra Time, Shaka. Frank McManaman, our first tweeter, says, how tough is it for players to buy into playing styles that they may not agree with? We've talked about this a little bit on the show. Can't imagine Harry Kane, Heung-Min Son enjoying Mourinho's tactics. Ale, what do you think?
It's tough when you think as a player that you've had success in the past doing things differently, and in comes a new manager, and I'm not referencing Mourinho in particular, but any new manager that comes in and tries to change the way that you've done things for years and things that have worked for you. As a player, you get used to certain things and certain levels of comfort in terms of what works for you on the field, what kind of routine works for you. And when in comes a manager that says, no, you know what, all those things that you've been successful with, you're going to do it differently now, and you don't see results right away as a player, then of course it is difficult. And most players are reticent to really taking that step forward and that leap of faith with a new coach unless they trust what this guy is saying.
Saw this in the Spurs-Fulham match the other day. Dan the Orange Man tweets, what are your thoughts on Eric Dyer dragging himself back onto the pitch for treatment after picking up an injury just to stop the game? What's the craziest time-wasting method you've ever seen used? Ian, you've watched a lot of football in your day. What's the craziest time-wasting you've seen?
The craziest time-wasting,
aside from you trying to answer this question.
A lot of it quite legitimate, really, from teams who are probably 1-0 up away from home. You know, you've seen goalkeepers. I remember seeing a goalkeeper wander behind the goal. Shaka will understand this one. They were 1-0 up, and the ball boy was trying to give him the ball back, and he kept saying to the ball boy, drop it, drop that ball, drop it, kick it away. And this went on for about 3 minutes, and they ate up a lot of time, and they held on for the 1-0 win. But this poor little ball boy was looking at the goalkeeper and saying, why are you telling me that? Why don't you want the ball? He said, no, I don't want the ball. Don't want the ball. So it was, that was one of the funniest.
Shaka, goalies the best, or should we say worst time wasters?
I don't know where we fall. I will freely admit, though, that during the course of my career, I developed, when we were up late in the game, I developed a run to retrieve the ball where my arms and legs were moving really quickly, but I was covering zero ground. It was great. Referees didn't know what was going on. So where does that fall in your little scale of best or worst? I don't know.
Yep. Ale,
I do remember,
yep.
Seb, I do remember in World Cup qualifiers in South America, Chile playing against Brazil, and the goalkeeper for Chile, El Condor Rojas, he actually cut himself, had some sort of cutting device or tool next to the goal, cut himself, and because he did that and faked as if something had been thrown from the stands, then the game was abandoned, and at some point Brazil was in jeopardy of not making it to the World Cup. Then the whole scheme came out, and El Condor Rojas, of course, was pointed at and persecuted because of it. But it was a real issue where Brazil and Chile had to abandon the game because of the things that apparently had been thrown from the stands, and indeed it was just the goalkeeper cutting himself. That's one way of wasting time. You just had to go and cut yourself on the field.
Ale, that was qualifying for the 90 World Cup? 94 World Cup? Which one was it?
It's for the 90 World Cup, I believe.
Yeah. Shaka?
I remember, I think somebody threw a flare on the field that landed next to him, and then all of a sudden he's bleeding profusely from his hand, and only when they reviewed the tape they realized that the flare fell 4 feet away from him, never touched him, never came any closer to him than that. And that he was faking. He cut himself.
Yeah. It wasn't the tape, it was a photograph from a Brazilian press photographer that actually caught the moment. ESPN did a 30 for 30 podcast on it, Fall of the Condor. Very, very good. Very well done. Ian, which Premier League team has a chance to make the top 4 that you didn't think had a chance / nobody is really talking about? Any dark horse top 4 teams for you?
Well, I mean, I think Everton have got a chance, and I don't think many people, apart from Carlo Ancelotti and the Toffees fans, would have said so at the start of the season. They've got a chance of making the top four. I think Southampton have got a bit of a squeak of doing it this season, and maybe Aston Villa as well, because although they're not in the top six at the moment, they've got 2 games in hand. So when they get everybody healthy again, they've had an outbreak of COVID in the camp, they could be involved as well. Basically, anything could happen because it's a scary and very unpredictable year.
All right, question for Ale. What does Inter need to do to beat Juventus on Sunday, and what is your prediction?
Inter over the last few years, and not only in Serie A, but also in Champions League as well, they've had moments like this where they can really, really, truly take a step forward. And in most of those occasions, they've taken a step back. At some point, Antonio Conte and this very talented, allegedly talented Inter team, they have to stand up. And never mind the tactics, never mind the passing of the ball and the movement and the tact. How about showing some character, strength of character? So if I were Inter, if there was one thing that you have to have against Juventus this weekend, it's a sense of belief and a strength of character to go and fight against Juventus and say, yeah, we're here to win this thing. If you don't believe you can beat Juventus, then you have no opportunity to do so. Juventus is right there for the taking. It's a team that's struggling. Finding consistency hasn't been the strength of this team throughout the course of the year. If there was ever a moment, this is it for Inter.
Inter second, Juve fourth heading into that match on Sunday. For each of the pundits, Shaka, I'll start with you. Who was the best coach that you played under?
The best coach I played under, Leo Bernacca for Trinidad and Tobago, formerly, of course, of Real Madrid. Leo was the best communicator in terms of manager or head coach I played under. He knew what he wanted, and he knew how to get his teams to play that. And I think that's a skill that not many have, or certainly nowhere near as well as Leo was able to get his ideas across to us.
Shaka, did he want to start you at the World Cup?
No. The only time I started under Leo Bernacca, and rightly so, I'll add, was against Sweden. Calvin Jack had been the preferred number 1 even before Leo took over, and Calvin performed wonderfully well throughout the qualifiers. I was down the pecking order, but then Calvin picked up a knock in one of the pre-tournament games, and I was carded to be on the bench, and in the warm-up, Calvin couldn't realize he couldn't continue, and that's when I got the nod.
Very good. Final question here. In light of the news of James Harden being traded, were you ever at a club where a player's demand for a transfer made the dressing room uncomfortable or caused any internal strife? Did you ever talk to a player or just mind your own business? Ale, you first. Any stories of locker room strife?
There are guys that walk into the locker room, and the moment they walk in, you get a sense that this guy is just gonna create issues. It's gonna be a problem. And I don't want to name names, but there was a guy at one point in one of the many locker rooms that I was a part of. This guy would walk into training or into the locker room with a bag full of McDonald's breakfast. Now, look, I don't mind people eating fast food, but that's not exactly the best preparation to go and play. Now, he would show up with this breakfast after he had been absent for days because he had gone home and visited his family for what was supposed to be a weekend and ended up being a week. When as a coach or as an organization you allow those things to happen, then within the locker room, anything that he does is going to create a problem. And eventually it became an untenable position, untenable situation, and the club had to move away from the player.
Shaka, any stories of a guy that just wanted to get out and was content to make everybody else's life miserable?
I can't think of any that had that kind of an impact on our dressing rooms. At any point in a football club, somebody wants out, and you know, for whatever reason, and try to force that issue through. But kind of comes with the territory, and you don't pay those players too much mind, in all honesty.
Ian, What's the worst transfer story you've heard?
Just going back to what the guys were talking about there, I mean, I didn't play professionally, of course. I was just a keen amateur player. But I actually got to play one day. Talk about dressing room strife. We played at Wembley, an empty Wembley, in a media game as the forerunner to an auto glass final. And you'll never guess this, but the guy, I was working for a company called Sky Sports at the time in England, and the guys from the BBC who were in the team as well with us would not talk to us because we were rival broadcasters. So they were on the same team as us. So we never spoke to the BBC TV guys ahead of this game at Wembley, and we were all on the same team. So, yeah, we only had one game, and we got it wrong.
There you go. Some rivalries never go out of style. Somebody get that phone in the background, whoever that was. That's it for today's edition of Extra Time.
Hey, Seb, I can tell you, Seb, that there was a scramble in the house to get the phone. I could sense that there was a real change of pace.
That's
I
right.
believe from my wife, who might have tripped getting to the phone. I don't know. I'll have to confirm that at some other point at FC later this week.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week, subscribe to ESPN+.